Very recently, it came to me that there is a great similarity between the concept of God as we know it and the book, a movie, The Wizard of Oz. There's uncanny similarity, and I would like to use it as an opportunity to dive deeper into that concept of God. That is very much dominating human civilization. Before that, let me, to my best capacity, shortly summarize the movie itself, The Wizard of Oz. So the story begins with a little girl, Dorothy, from Kansas, that was getting into different troubles and made a wish to find a place somewhere that maybe such place exists where there are no troubles. And then in the start of the very big storm, she finds herself being transported to that magical land of Oz. You need to watch the movie. It's special. Unfortunately, in that land of Oz, she finds herself in different kinds of troubles. There are always some troubles, no matter where you go. And as the movie continues, she undertakes with her three newfound friends a journey to the Emerald City, where the Wizard of Oz is meant to reside. In order to grant them the four wishes. So there's this scarecrow who wants to receive brain. He is actually quite clever already, but he does not know it. You know. Dorothy is asking him, how come can you talk if you don't have a brain? And he says, don't you know many people who talk all the time and still have no brains? It's funny, but true. Then the Tin Man is wanting to be given heart, and the lion wants to receive courage, and Dorothy herself, she wants to return home. She is missing her home. She wants to go back to Kansas, but does not know how. So this is already, we can see symbols here, such as on the spiritual path you need brain, you need intelligence, you need heart, which is feeling, and you need courage to go against the fundamental fears behind human existence. Because those fears are holding you back, preventing you from going forward. And you want to return home. So as they continue their journey, the wicked witch from the west is making them to go through the poppy field where they fall asleep. It's also symbolic. Just before the Emerald City, so many seekers, when they are closer to their destination, they fall asleep. They just fall asleep, and their journey is finished. Luckily, in the movie, the good witch is waking them up so they can continue. And then they reach the Emerald City, and Dorothy is asking the gatekeeper if they can see the great wizard. And the gatekeeper says, no, it's impossible. No one sees the great wizard. No one has ever seen the great wizard. Even me, myself, I have not seen the great wizard. So Dorothy is asking a very good question. So how do you know that there is one? He does not know what to answer and just mumbles something, avoiding the question. Before we go any further, I would like you to again see that comparison to God, the concept of God, is already emerging. Do you believe in God? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that God exists? It is an important contemplation because on the way to deeper understanding, it's our responsibility to question our beliefs, our basic assumptions and perceptions of reality. That is the function of having the brain, you see. Those who do not question their reality simply have no brain. Do you believe in God? If you do, or you think God exists, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen one? Do you know anyone who has ever seen one? I have not seen one. So how do we know that there is one? if no one has seen him? Religions come with a very clever solution in order to camouflage their ignorance, and that solution is faith and belief. That term faith became very much glorified in religions as it was something positive and exciting, and it is just a shame, because what is hiding beneath that so-called faith is fear and lack of courage, which exactly the lion is looking for, that courage. And certain fundamental dishonesty. Dishonesty to be able to acknowledge a fundamental fact that I don't know. No one knows. And that is the greatest fear of religious people, to confront that fact that they just know nothing and nothing whatsoever. They live in hoping that through the idea of God and His mysterious presence they might find meaning to their existence. And many of them are terrified of not surviving their physical death, so they are projecting also fear into this area. They want to exist in heaven, but nobody knows. There are of course people who claim to have seen God. But how do you know that there is any truth before even we question their claim? How do you know? How can you verify that what they are saying is true at all? As human beings live, especially in spirituality, 99% in imagination. Those who claim to have seen God are what is called lunatics, or spiritually insane, or deluded, or simply liars. There are plenty of those. Prophets are lunatics, that through their fanatism and the power of their conviction were able to convince other people that their experience was valid. If one say that I hope there is God, it's actually a valid wish, not the greatest wish ever, not such an amazing wish, but it's at least valid. But if one says, I believe in God, that is invalid. That's why we begin to deceive ourselves. But let's continue the story. Eventually, with some luck, Dorothy and her friends are able to have an audience with Wizard Oz. Wizard of Oz, the great wizard. But when they enter that chamber in which he is supposed to be present, they do not see anyone in particular, but rather a spectacle, an apparition on the screen of a big head, which is speaking very loudly and in a commanding, booming, commanding voice, saying basically things which are meaningless. But they are begging that apparition, that illusion casted on the screen, that to fulfill their wishes. At the end, towards the end of the movie, what happens is that the curtain behind which the wizard is present, it's meant to be present, falls down, and what you see is not a great Oz. What you see is a little man, ashamed of getting caught. He's basically a fraud. Dorothy says to him, "Oh, you are a very bad man to deceive us like this." And he says, "I am not a bad man. I am a good man. I am just a very bad wizard." It's actually not entirely true. Do you see? Because he is a fraud and a liar, which kind of contradicts the idea of being a good man. Preying on the naive. And now I would like to revert back to the concept of God before we proceed any further. What is that God? It's an idea. Idea which is a human invention. There are many kinds of invented gods, but there's a general idea of a God, of the God. Which underlines all the major religions. And that idea is actually very strong, very powerful, and that idea begins to control us. meaning that idea gains certain autonomous power as if becomes an entity that starts to control us, enslave us. This is what God did. He enslaved us. As an example, God of Old Testament, cruel God, stern judge, jealous God, ready to destroy the whole city, turn it into ash, including children and animals, just because these poor people worship idols. He doesn't want them to worship other gods. He's jealous. That strategy of destroying cities, if they do not surrender to you, was used by many tyrants, such as Genghis Khan. Great cruelty lies behind that, but people just cannot see it. They are afraid of God. This is from where the concept fear of God comes. And that God, or that idea, enslaved, at that point, Jewish people. They are slaves of that idea. But that idea was not satisfied. It wanted to enslave the whole world. So then through the channel of New Testament, being the backing of the figure of Jesus and his idea of his sacrifice and whatnot, that same idea, that same God actually enslaved the whole West, most of the known world at the time, and still it is the situation. But he is a fraud. That God is a fraud. He is actually the great deceiver, meaning that he is also the devil. He is God and devil in the same idea, hidden in the same idea. But if you look deeper into that idea, who is the fraud there? You cannot say God is the fraud because this is just an idea. It's an idea of God. An idea of God is a human invention, and idea by itself cannot become a fraud. So who is that little man behind that idea of God, which has been terrorizing humanity in all kinds of forms? Who is that little man, you may ask? And you might look into the history trying to find a particular individual or individuals that instigated that superstition. But that's not the real answer. Because the real fraud is you and me. We have done it to ourselves. We have deceived each other. We have deceived ourselves. We have entirely lost ourselves in that idea. We have become slaves of that idea. Friedrich Nietzsche at some point said that God is dead. Very remarkable statement. And then someone else mentioned that to say that God is dead, it means that he has existed before. And therefore it's the sentence of Nietzsche was incomplete or partial truth. But it's not necessarily the case, because what Nietzsche meant was not that the God is dead, because something that never existed cannot be dead, but what was dead was the idea. And the Western civilization came to the point that, you can say, on some level, people grown more mature, and they got more brains. On some level they did not. But still there was something there that was beginning to make that idea of God outdated. That idea was not meant to keep living. That idea reached its expiration date. So you might look around and see that this idea is still present very much, less than before, because people are becoming different levels smarter, but still that idea is very much present. But is it really? The fact that something is present does not mean that it is alive. Something that is dead can also be present. It already died, but somehow its corpse is continuing to float in the collective. So another question that can be asked, so does it mean that God does not exist? It is only an idea. It is only an idea, but it exists. God exists, but it does not exist in the heavens, in the beyond, in the sky. It exists in the collective consciousness. It exists and it appears to be independent from us, relate to us, answering our prayers, punishing us. And that's the funny thing about creating that idea that becomes autonomous. Not really, but appears to be autonomous. So all these gods and the one monotheistic God, they all exist in the collective consciousness. But collective consciousness is also full of nonsense. And so it is. Reclaiming our spiritual power is the only way to transcend religions. Is to transcend the idea of God and to stop being the race of slaves. Towards the end of the movie Wizard of Oz, after they realize that wizard is a fraud, they also realize something else. They realize that they did not need to receive from him. They did not need him to fulfill their wishes, because they already have them inside them, the fulfillment of these wishes, the object of these wishes. Scarecrow realized that he has brains, that he is very smart. Tin Man realized that he can feel, therefore he has a heart. And Lion realized that he already has courage. And Dorothy that in a moment of doubt was scared that she can never return to Kansas. She, with the help of Good Witch, realized that she has the power to return home in 2 seconds. And it's very same with you. You have the power. You have the power to return home. Even now, in a split of a second. Because me is your home. I visited in Korea shamanic temples and also Shinto temples in Japan, where at the end of the shrine, at the center of the shrine, they had a very beautiful symbol. Not God in this shape or that shape. It was a mirror. If you want to put something on your altar, put a mirror. Because at the end of the journey into God, into the beyond, into the divine, into supernatural, into transcendence, at the end what you are going to see is the reflection of yourself, your own face. And that's awakening. To come to that place. To have the courage and intelligence to separate oneself from all those spiritual and religious dreams and fantasies and projections and superstitions, from all the beliefs which have become our cage. That is awakening. So look carefully into that mirror. Look carefully what it is that you see. Because what you see, whether it fulfills your expectations or not, whether it is disappointing or not, whether it is not in at all what you expected, because you have not expected it, in your whole reality, and I mean whole reality, everything included, that's the first real thing that has ever happened to you. Seeing your reflection. And what is the deepest expression of seeing your reflection? Because it is a symbol. It's not that you look at a certain mirror to see your face. The deepest expression of that is to come back to me. After these eons of separation from me, you come back to me. In the poem of Rumi, I'm sure familiar with, where he is knocking at the door of God, and God asks, "Who is there?" Rumi says, "It is I." And God did not allow him to enter. Then eventually he said, "It is you, it is you," and the gate opened. That story is very well known, but it does not represent, it represents only half of a truth, or quarter of a truth. Because when he said, "It is you," it means that God is me. You are me. But me is also God. Because there's only me. There's no you. So the first answer of Rumi was actually the correct one. He was just phrasing that answer from a wrong place in himself, from that place of being a separate creature, separate entity. But if he was able to see deeper, he would stick with his first answer. And if the God did not let him pass, he would say something, as they say in Zen, because there's a similar story in Zen, "I don't need to enter, because I am already in." So that's it. Now, I would like to use this meditation also to address another subject, because I was asked by some students if there's only me, is there such a thing as darkness, as evil? First of all, I need to say it clearly that there are no such things as dark entities attacking us. Unfortunately, I am also here to blame, because it was part of my belief system in the past that there are different presences that wish us bad, and that they can affect us in all kind of negative ways. There are no such entities. These entities are creation of fear. Human fear runs very deep, to such extent that you begin to see monsters around yourself. Like a child which is afraid of the dark and sees monsters under his bed. Darkness does exist, but in the collective, it's part of the collective consciousness. And if you are emotionally deeply disturbed, and there are a lot of fears, or you go into states which are irrational, then that darkness from the collective consciousness can affect you. It's kind of attaching itself to you. Because remember, the gateway to that darkness, the collective, is your own darkness. So when you generate darkness, you attract the darkness, which is part of the collective. That's how it works. But then, if you begin to imagine that there's some entity there, there's actually a creature outside of you, trying to hurt you, that is delusion. Same with God, with the concept of God. You created that idea, and then that idea appears to be looking back at you as an entity. So there's also darkness in people. But what is really darkness? It's not about creating another concept of the metaphysical evil. The definition of darkness is quite simple. It is negativity. It's part of the journey of me, as me journeyed into separation and created all these worlds outside of itself. That negativity as part of this journey had to develop. And that negativity served its purpose as well. But when we do not see the purpose of it, well, it becomes a thing just in itself. This is where it's hurting, only hurting us. It's not teaching us, it's only hurting us. So when you experience negativity, what you may translate as darkness, whether it's coming from your personal mind or from the collective mind, know that you are creating it. You are responsible. Everything in your life you have created. No matter how terrible things happened in your life, in your childhood, all of it you have created. You have manifested everything. And to understand that you have created your life, not God, not a destiny, not things don't happen just randomly, but that you created all of this, should allow you to take responsibility for your life. And through taking that responsibility, you claim your empowerment as me. Because there's only me. And everything, and that which is not me, does not exist. And one more thing I wanted to mention. The fact that there is no God, the God is just an idea, Or if there's God, it is just in the... It's not an objective reality, but part of the human invention, present in the collective consciousness, in the collective mind. The fact that there is no God does not mean that there is no supreme reality. Because when people come to think there is no God, so they just give up on the existence of a higher power, and they just think, oh, we are just left alone here, lost to ourselves. So there is no God, but there is supreme reality. There is all these concepts often associated ignorantly with God. They often intuit a presence of something. There's some validity behind those higher concepts, like that God is love, for instance. So there's a reality in it, but that reality, which is not God. It's part of this supreme reality, which is not in the sky, not in the heavens, but which is in me. Evolution into me, surrender to me, is where we begin the highest and the only real journey, spiritual journey in existence. Where me begins to reveal itself to itself. It begins to reveal ever deeper reality in itself that is beyond imagination. So know that there is only me. Absorb that knowledge fully in me. We'll be finishing now. And we'll continue next week, going deeper into the mystery, the splendor that is in you, that is in me.